What would you say maybe is the core mission for Beam and what you guys are trying to do?
But on one side, we are building ourselves and have been building different things for many years. On the other hand, we've also been helping other companies fundraise. We've been investing in different companies, just working with those different founders and supporting them.
Kind of curious on your strategy there. When you think about Abu Dhabi from an innovation landscape, and like what are you guys seeing?
Abu Dhabi is, in my opinion, one of the, if not the most, forward-looking places to be building frontier technology.
Digital finance and AI, and it's kind of a very interesting point in time to see how these things come together and some of the things that are being created.
I like to look at them not as separate industries anymore, but rather overlapping layers that are slowly, forming together.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode here of the BlockHash Podcast, number one resource for all that is happening across the emerging tech space. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe wherever you listen to or watch the show. Today, I'm joined by another wonderful guest, Marco van den Heuvel, co-founder of Beam, here to talk about how Beam is a frontier tech ecosystem pioneering the next era of Web3 infrastructure, gaming, AI-driven innovation, and much more. Marco, welcome to the show. Pleasure to have you on today. How you doing?
Thank you. Good to be here. Yeah, doing good. Excited to dive into. Plenty for us to talk about today. So we'll see what we'll be able to cover.
Absolutely. Before we do, would love to start off with yourself and kind of get a little bit of an idea of what your background has kind of been like and what I guess caught your interest about the Web3 space in general and maybe led you down this path wanting to be a part of it, and then also how that kind of led to the co-founding of Beam.
Sure, yeah, that's going to be a whole story.
I want to hear it.
No, so I got into crypto back early 2017. Someone told me about Bitcoin, and I, immediately got fascinated. I remember just going home, reading up about Bitcoin, learning about Ethereum, learning about the other cryptocurrencies, and just going into Telegram groups, reading white papers, and it became, immediately a hobby of mine where I was like, there's something here. And back then, there obviously wasn't a lot of documentation out there in general. A lot of companies were still coming up. It was before, the first bull run as we know it. And so in those Telegram groups, I just started chatting with people. And as I was educating myself, I started educating others as well. And so that's naturally came into starting to really enjoying building digital communities and educating others about crypto. And so I started joining different projects on, startups on, hey, how can you actually position yourself in the market? How do you build a community? And very naturally rolled into more the entrepreneurial side of things. I never really set to go that path, but it just happened to be in, again, something that came from a hobby towards a profession. And so fast forward, I did that for a couple of years, and until the point where gaming and crypto really, took off. We saw Axie Infinity, we saw Illuvium, Star Atlas, you name it, became popular titles. And as that kind of was growing, I became involved with it as I've always been a gamer. And that's very fast forward again, resulted into what is Beam today. I ended up co-founding, initially a gaming guild, got two really amazing co-founders on board that were more on the fun side of things. And we were really able to together take this to the next level, hire the right talent, get the right people around us, right funding. It's been quite a roller coaster ever since, I would say.
Exciting. And then what would you say maybe is the core mission for Beam and what you guys are trying to do, but also what maybe specific problems in today's digital finance landscape and for startups motivated you to create Beam too?
So I think to get started with Beam, I find that it's something that wasn't, created from day one. We're in a very fast moving industry. And so what was Beam at the beginning, like I said, very much on the gaming side, just the guild side, quickly became into something much bigger. And I think, our goal, and it might sound broad, is really just to be able to push this industry further in whatever means, it takes to be able to do that. And so I think Beam is pretty interesting when it comes to Web3 because we are on two sides of the table. On one side, we are building ourselves and have been building different things for many years. And so we have that first-hand experience on what is it like to really be building in Web3 and what is it like to be, connecting different industries with Web3. And on the other hand, we've also been helping other companies fundraise. We've been investing in different companies And we've been helping them with their go-to-market, with their branding, with the positioning, basically the things where we learned really our strengths as a team are. And so having done that also for many years now, we get to have that builder experience. We get to have that really look inside of so many different kitchens to the point where you see, this is really what is interesting. And I think as founders coming into Web3, you have first-time founders that maybe come from outside Web3. You have founders that initially starting Web3, but it navigating those waters, to put it that way, is completely different from doing this in traditional industries. You have the community side, you have the product side, you have a lot of transparency, I would say, when it comes to community wanting updates, wanting news, wanting information on what it is that you're building. That leads to a lot of common pitfalls for a lot of companies. And so I think that is something that is still missing a little bit today. It is, helping founders to overcome those common pitfalls and really have them be able to have the tools and have the experience to push them further so that they can focus on what is most important, which is their go-to-market, which is their path to revenue, and building a sustainable business, rather than having to, learn all those mistakes firsthand as well. And so I think what's really cool is that we've been helping a lot of founders for many years. We're now in the midst of setting up a venture fund in Abu Dhabi called Beam Ventures. And for us, when it comes to Beam, it's a very natural, I would say, extension of something that we've been doing for all those many years, which is, working with those different founders and supporting them. I'll stop there because there's plenty for us to talk about, but feel free to ask further questions, obviously.
Yeah, you mentioned these common pitfalls. I'm curious if you have any examples, maybe with some startups that you guys have worked with on the venture side that maybe are a good example or use case that you can share of, what you kind of did with them or for them in terms of their Web3 or AI, facing products, or what that kind of looked like a little bit under the hood. Just kind of curious, like what some of those use cases look like for you guys.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think that one example that comes to mind would be with Aether. For those that don't know Aether, they're very much focused on the AI side, basically decentralizing compute, which is amazing for training AI agents. Is amazing for cloud computing and cloud gaming. And what examples I have there, for example, is that this is an example of a company that has a very disruptive business model, right? AI is something that is already very difficult. You have the whole product that needs to come on the market, and then you have, again, navigating those Web3 waters with it. And so they've launched nodes, for example, they have their token. And so their team, being more from the traditional side of things, also, wanted to prevent them having the common pitfalls of being too traditional in your wording, in your branding, in your positioning of, something that might to a lot of people not be a sexy product, turning it into a sexy product, because it is very disruptive once again, and it is a very interesting company. And so we help them a little bit with what could your branding look like? How could you position this in Web3? How could you build this community around this? And really focusing on those Web3 elements that we do best, I would say, to really enable them to focus on that whole AI side, basically their product. And that's just one example. We have, I would say, many more examples. I think Sofon is a good one as well. Sofon initially, really wanted to build this entertainment chain. They too, like I said, it's a fast-moving market, are slowly adapting with it. But in the beginning, when they went from concept to, MVP towards pushing this further, they also require, branding, positioning. How are we going to fundraise? Is it going to be on the token side? Is it going to be on the node side? And how do you basically put all of that together? It's been very interesting to be working with those two companies specifically, I would say. Also very successful stories, I would say. But yeah, what we're I would say helping where we can, different angles.
That's awesome. How do you come to be approaching some of these companies? Like, are you reaching out to them? Are they reaching out to you? Or what does that process and funnel kind of look like for working with some of these startups?
Both, I would say. Yeah, there have been occasions where we would reach out to a company that maybe had already, for example, fundraised, or we're seeing that they are in the midst of fundraising and we're very interested in what they are building. and we're looking at, what is it that you need. I mean, in some cases a company could be very direct in saying, we just want to check, we're not looking for that hands-on support. But very often they would be very open towards, having more, I would say, supportive, hands-on supportive investors. And I think that's also what kind of stood us apart, is where a lot of funds, they tend to be more on the, hey, here's a check, good luck. I think, when it comes to AI, when it comes to Web3, when it comes to finance, there's a lot of complexity there, and having money is great, but at the same time, you need to have your timing right. You need to have that positioning and branding right, like I talked about earlier, to the point where if we're able to help them with that, that's great. We've also had companies come to us, obviously, when they're pitching us with a deck. I've had times where someone put a meeting in your calendar, you show up, and it turns into a proper pitch where you expected just a casual conversation, for example. There have been all sorts of ways in which companies have been tried to get in touch and be able to pitch to us, which sometimes there's interesting pitches there. But yeah, we have a good BD team, I would say, on our end that's really able to vet those opportunities.
What makes a good pitch? What are things that you guys are looking for, and maybe some insights you can give to companies and startups out there in the future that may want to work with you guys, or maybe that want to do this just generally, get help from a venture side, like what Beam has? Are you guys looking for like strong teams, strong narratives? Are you looking for certain metrics and numbers, or like what are some of the things you guys kind of weigh really heavily that help you make a decision?
That is a good question, because I think there's no golden blueprint towards, hey, do this with us and we'll invest. It's obviously always a case by case basis. But I think what really matters to us is founder mentality. And what I mean by that is that we're in an industry where we have seen so many promises, right? But if you look at what's actually been delivered, there's plenty of examples where obviously a majority doesn't make the cut. And that counts for traditional industries as well. Having a startup obviously is no guarantee for success. But what we did see is with founder mentality, really having founders that want to be that, hands-on person. They're really eager to make this work, and they put in more than that, 9 to 5. And it sounds very obvious, but there's so many founders that are too easygoing when it comes to fundraising, thinking, hey, we have fundraised, we have 2 years, let's say, runway to make this a success. A lot of founders will be thinking, okay, in 2 years, if it doesn't work, we will raise again. And so they're not in this really eager, motivated position to really make this work, thinking like, life, death situation. We have to make this work or we're gone. I think that mentality is somewhat shifted in the past 1 to 2 years, now that fundraising has become harder. And, a lot of, as this industry matures, you are seeing more vetted prospects. You are seeing more higher quality teams coming into the industry, wanting to move the needle to the point where I think, past 5 years, comparing them to the next 5 years, I think we're going to see now a lot of those promises and a lot of experimentation, I would say, result into actually, quality businesses that do have what it takes to stay.
I want to zoom out a little bit and look at this, the region a little bit too. There's a lot that's happening in the Middle East in terms of, a lot of different amazing companies and focus, I think, around Web3, next gen finance, companies kind of like within that realm. We always hear about Dubai and UAE and Abu Dhabi in particular. I want to, ask about, like, I'm curious, like what you're maybe seeing and feeling on the ground there when it comes to like the conditions maybe that is driving some of that growth. Like, is it just regulation? Is it optimism? Is it capital flow? And then how is Beam kind of fitting into that broader strategy in the region? Like, are you guys like fully trying to take advantage of that internally for companies there? Are you using it to branch out externally? Just kind of curious on your strategy there, what you think about Abu Dhabi from an innovation landscape, and like what are you guys seeing?
Yeah, I think that I'll start by saying you don't have to be in Silicon Valley anymore to make it. You know what I mean? Abu Dhabi is, in my opinion, one of the, if not the most, forward-looking places to be building frontier technology. What makes it so unique, in my opinion, is that you have indeed regulation, you have the financial side of things, so capital, and you have the innovation side really working in sync. It's a place where, thanks to, for example, the FSRA, basically the financial regulations around digital assets, they've really built a clear, I would say, framework around how digital assets should work there. And so when you then think about that in combination with their 2030 vision plan, where they really want to be a major player when it comes to digital, and financial services, it makes that is the perfect breeding ground for Beam to be at. And so we are establishing, like I said, a venture fund called Beam Ventures there. Really want it to be a qualified investor fund under the Abu Dhabi global markets, so the EDGM that is. And basically what we want to do is take that, first-hand experience that we have and that global exposure and global network that we have towards the local creditability. Like I said, there's been so many different actors across the field and so many different experimentations that I feel like the next 5 years we're finally going to see really, what it takes to move this industry forward. And I think that, Abu Dhabi is pretty the place where that is going to happen. And so, for us, it's pretty much a blueprint for how innovation and regulation should work together. And so I'm really excited for us to set up shop there, so to speak.
Yeah, Abu Dhabi's definitely doing it right when it comes to the space and the innovation and kind of fostering that growth. Do you think that blueprint and that framework can be kind of copy and pasted into other places? It feels like there's a lot of places in the world that like try to do the same thing, and maybe in some areas they fall short because it's too expensive or the entry's too high, or there's other regulations that make it more difficult. But they seem to like have something good going there that makes a lot of sense. Do you think that can be replicated in other places, or is that very unique to Abu Dhabi and where they are?
In theory, it could be replicated. I think in practice, though, like you said, there are so many different elements that are coming together here. Like I said, there's regulation side, there's the capital side of things, and then there is the innovation side of things. I think what Abu Dhabi really does well is that they're one of the first, I would say, jurisdictions to really put this in sync. I think you're seeing, in the States, you're seeing in Europe, a lot of regulation that are slowing down, innovation when it comes to different aspects. Won't go too deep into that. Then combining that with, being more restrictive in how much funding you want to put into this. Abu Dhabi is really saying, we see that this is the industry that's moving. We see that this is the most promising place that you could look at right now. And so we're just putting it all on the table. We're going, almost all in, I would say, to really make this work and make this happen. And that's what makes this so unique. I think where a lot of places, they're still maybe discussing together what this should look like. Here, they're just making those decisions. And they're, also, I would say, move with us as is. And that's also why it's great that, for example, we bringing a lot of experience from Web3 to Abu Dhabi and being able to also work with those parties on, shaping this. That's also what for us makes it such an interesting opportunity, something that we probably wouldn't find elsewhere either.
Absolutely. It sounds like a place that I need to visit at some point. Everyone's been trying to pull me out that direction for a long time. So I definitely need to make some plans to visit in the next year. Let's talk about the future a little bit. We're seeing a lot of convergence between Web3 and digital finance and AI, and it's kind of a very interesting point in time to see all these things come together and some of the things that are being created. I'm curious what you think the near future, 2, 3, 4 years down the line is going to kind of look like with all these different innovations and technologies that we have coming together and creating some of these products, and maybe what opportunities as well that you see kind of coming out of that.
I've been mentioning frontier technology a couple of times. I think, when I'm talking about, we're really looking at, AI, gaming, finance. Basically, the way I like to put it is this is the industries where experimentation sees like real world adoption at scale. There are industries where there's a lot of end users. And so it's really fast moving, not just on the product side, but also on the user side. And so when it comes to Web3, when it comes to digital finance, when it comes to AI, I think I like to look at them not as separate industries anymore, but rather overlapping layers that are slowly, forming together. And so to put that into a little bit less of a vague, description, AI is basically changing the way that we look at productivity. It is changing productivity. Then finance is becoming programmable, and then Web3 is basically the layer that has interoperability and transparency added to those layers, right? And so when you look at those opportunities in the next 5 years, I think it's really at founders that are building something at that intersection. And to put that into practical examples, I already talked about Avery a little bit, where you can decentralize access to compute and capital. You have AI-driven financial systems that are coming up. You have user-owned gaming economies that you could look at. Like, there's so many practical examples already where you see that experimentation find adoption. And sure, a lot of it I would say is still in the early days, but that's why I also mentioned that looking back 5 years, it was even earlier days, and a lot of those things were not really defined yet or possible. But AI has been moving so fast, and the other industries have been moving so fast that if in an Abu Dhabi you have the, again, playgrounds to be able to do this in a very clear regulatory framework, that's where I think really you can start pushing the needle. So that's what I find interesting. And I think, to put it short, that's also where we as Beam are looking to position ourselves, where innovation really meets that regulation to be able to work in that clear field.
Looking at the market perspective as well, because it's been, for I think a lot of people, very volatile and uneasy as of lately, trying to understand what's kind of going on in the market, not just from a price standpoint, but just from like a longevity point of view. It feels like there's a little bit of projects. You've talked about this earlier too in the episode too. Projects maybe that have oversold themselves and not have delivered. There's a lot of fast-paced innovation on top of that. So it's like the next thing after the next thing. And there's also, it feels like a lot of venture capital that's maybe been over deployed in areas maybe where it was too early. And those things can be a recipe for bubbles and disasters sometimes. I think people are very concerned that maybe we're in that state of a market right now where maybe we're in a bit of a tech bubble, Web3, AI bubble. Like maybe we've over deployed, over promised, overspent, overinvested, and maybe it's overstepping and bound to pull back a bit. Curious, also your thoughts just on the market at large. If you think that maybe it's one of those situations where you take 2 steps forward, you have to take 1 step back just to take another 2 steps forward. And maybe what we should keep in mind going into the new year with some of this uncertainty.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, financial speculation aside, looking at the way that, I have to be careful there, obviously. No, but if you look at the way that funding has been deployed, I mean, sure, I already mentioned when it comes to Web3 gaming, for example, the past 2 years have been way harder for studios to raise than it was, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. And I would say it was a good example of something where a lot of allocation was indeed overspent. There were valuations that didn't make sense anymore, given that we're still dealing with startups at the end of the day, that don't have product market fit yet. They don't have revenue yet. And so, sure, I can imagine that some of those things might make people feel scared of, hey, is this entire thing a bubble maybe, when you start seeing things implode on different elements. I think that's also where a lot of venture funds can be too cautious, thinking that, what, we're just going to fully take our hands off of this. We no longer see this as, an opportunity. That's also typically a moment where opportunities arise. I think a lot of this comes to, again, we are focusing on industries that are, among that frontier technology that we call it, because that's where we see adoption is going to really play a huge role, and there is a good fit there. And that's why I would say it is also about cherry picking. So when it comes to AI, there's a lot of companies, and in Web3, we've seen a lot of those companies arise recently where, in essence, they were just ChatGPT wrappers. But that's also why, I would say it's not for everyone to just be blindly investing a lot of those things. It's a lot about doing very proper due diligence. And so that's why I mentioned, we have those people that have that experience. A really cool thing about Beam Ventures, which I meant to mention earlier, is that it's not just the Beam experience that we have there, but we also are doing this in collaboration with WW Ventures, which is a venture fund that has been in Web3 for a long time too. And so they also have analysts on their team. And so it's a lot about having multiple people look at something and really look at, okay, is this something that is promising to us? Do the valuations make sense? is indeed, like I said, that founder mentality, right, to the point where we see this founder really is going to do everything it takes to either, go boom or bust. There's so many different elements here where I don't believe that in its entirety this is a bubble. I think there is too much promising tech here. There's too much promising products here, and we are already seeing too much adoption for that to happen. You're seeing it on the stablecoin side. You're seeing it on, obviously decentralized finance being, I would say, the perfect practical example of something that makes so much sense that it is logically the first to move and become bigger. But we're also going to see that on the other, frontier technology sites that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, 100%. So what are your guys' plans heading into 2026 then? What do you guys want to focus on? How do you want to continue growing and expanding Beam in the venture side? What can we look forward to with you guys?
Sure, yeah. On the Beam Lab side, I'll mention that. I think for us, we'll continue to do that firsthand, building experience. So we've just launched an early version of DreamCash, which basically is a mobile layer for Hyperliquid, which is also a market we're very fascinated by, and it's just very, rapidly seeing adoption and growth. We're only going to see more growth there going into 2026, in my opinion. And then on the Beam Venture side, like I said, we're still in the process of securing that license. And so that is for us step one. Once we have that license, we're qualified funds, we can start fundraising, and we can also start with the first cohort of our booster program. So besides just building a venture fund, we're also building the accelerator arm, where basically we're able to help founders on any given stage of their company, right? If they're very early stage, they'll be perfect candidates for the booster program, where they can have that hands-on support, be it on, go-to-market, be it connections that we have on either the ecosystem side or the regulatory side, wanting to build in Abu Dhabi, what does that look like? Or if it's a Series A or a Series C, or maybe, just a public raise. There's so many different stages that we can then help with on either the booster side or the fund side. That's really what we're focused on. So going into 2026, I'm excited to have the first, cohort of participants on the booster side. Personally, also going to be, I would say, more hands-on helping on that side. I just enjoy working with different founders. For me, that will probably be on the community side. And then I would say, 2026, probably people will be seeing us more at the interesting and promising conferences as well. I think throughout the past couple of years, we've really just been hands-on building. We're all, either at home or working at co-working spaces to push the products further. But I think now, with the whole venture side, we want to show our face more. We want to be more on the ground, really to help international companies and founders to learn the opportunity, that there is locally in Abu Dhabi, and hopefully get more talent moving that way. So I think that's it in a TLDR. Roadmap for us is always, stay executing, stay focused, just keep helping different founders.
Nice. Do you guys attend any like events or conferences in the industry as well? Like, is that something that you guys kind of do to find more prospects, I guess?
Yeah. So like I just mentioned, I do think in 2026, we want to show our face more. So for example, there's the Abu Dhabi Finance Week coming up, which is obviously a local conference that we're attending. But then you can also see us at like a Token 24/9, for example. There's one in Dubai, there's one in Singapore. We're really eager to show our face, I would say, not just at Web3 conferences, but also just conferences in AI, finance, tech general, that have an overlap with what kind of candidates or what kind of companies or connections we are looking to work with and get.
Exciting. And then where people go to learn more and get in contact with you guys? Maybe they want to send a pitch to you guys. Maybe they want to collaborate in some kind of way. What's the best way to do that?
Sure. Yeah. If you want to pitch, I would say wait for us to secure the license. Wait until we have that, accelerator program set up. Then it's a really good timing. But if you're excited about what we're either building or what we're working on, I would say our Telegram is a 24/7, AMA. Myself, another co-founder, another two guys, we're always around answering people's questions. We have a Discord server as well if you're more on the technical side of things. And obviously on Twitter too, I would say that's where we share major news, announcements, updates. If you're not too keen on, following day-to-day conversations, but yeah, I'd love to see you there, and happy to be chatting with whoever is listening and wants to show up.
Sounds great. Well, Marco, I appreciate you taking the time. This has been great learning more about what you guys are doing from the venture side, what's happening in Abu Dhabi, and broadly across the space. So it's been a great discussion, and looking forward to doing this again soon here in the near future. Maybe I can come meet you out there and we'll do a part 2.
Sounds great. Yeah, looking forward to it.